The question hung in the air like a prayer waiting to be answered. "If I play well enough tonight, will you help my baby Maya Thompson?" stood on the stage of New York's Grand Theater, illuminated by a spotlight that seemed to judge her as harshly as the four faces staring from the judge's table. In her arms, wrapped in a blanket that had seen better days, was 8-month-old Lily. The baby's eyes were wide, taking in the 1,000 faces in the darkness beyond the lights, taking in a world that had shown her mother little mercy. Maya was 29 years old, though the streets had aged her beyond her years. Her dress, donated from a shelter volunteer just hours before, hung loose on a frame that had known too many hungry nights. Her hair, once professionally styled for performances at jazz clubs across Manhattan, was now pulled back in a simple ponytail. But her eyes still held something the streets couldn't take, something that desperation couldn't break: dignity. "Ma'am, this is a talent competition, not a childcare facility." The voice came from the center of the judge's table: Rebecca Blackwood, CEO, philanthropist, a woman whose jewelry could have housed Maya and Lily for a year. Her tone carried the weight of dismissal, the casual cruelty of someone who had never known what it meant to choose between feeding a child and feeding yourself. The audience laughed. Not all of them, but enough. Enough for Maya to feel the familiar sting of being less than, of being judged not for her talent, but for her circumstances. "I apologize," Maya said quietly, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "I have nowhere to leave her. But I can play. I promise you I can play." Rebecca leaned back in her chair, exchanging glances with the other judges. Her expression said everything. This was a waste of time. A homeless woman with a baby standing on the stage of America's most prestigious talent show. What could she possibly offer? "Fine," Rebecca said finally, waving a manicured hand. "Someone get the baby. Let's get this over with." An elderly woman rose from the third row. She was black like Maya, with silver hair and eyes that had seen their own share of struggles. She walked to the stage with quiet purpose, arms outstretched. Maya hesitated, then gently passed Lily to the stranger. Their eyes met. A moment of understanding passed between them. Solidarity in silence. Maya turned toward the piano. A Steinway grand, black and gleaming under the lights. She had dreamed of this moment 1,000 times in the past 8 months. Dreamed of it while sleeping on shelter cots. Dreamed of it while nursing Lily in the cold. Dreamed of it while practicing on cardboard boxes, her fingers remembering movements her body had never forgotten. But standing here now, the reality was different. Terrifying. Final. She sat down on the bench. The leather was smooth, expensive. Her hands hovered over the keys, and in that moment she wasn't sure they would remember. 8 months since she'd touched a real piano. 8 months since her world had collapsed. 8 months since the music died with Michael. Would her fingers remember what her heart had tried to forget? The theater held its breath. And then Maya closed her eyes and let her hands fall to the keys. The first note filled the theater like a confession. It was a single note, held long and pure, resonating in the vast space. A note that carried weight. History. Pain. Hope. Everything Maya Thompson had lived through in 29 years of life, distilled into a single sound. And then another note joined it. And another. What happened next, no one in that theater would ever forget. But to understand that moment, you have to go back. Back before the shelter, before the streets, before the night that changed everything. You have to go back to a 6-year-old girl in Harlem sitting at an upright piano in a community center on 125th Street. Maya Thompson was born in New York City in 1995, the only child of Marcus and Diane Thompson. Marcus worked as a janitor at Columbia University. Diane was a nurse at Harlem Hospital, working double shifts to keep their small apartment on Frederick Douglass Boulevard. They didn't have much, but what they had, they poured into their daughter. The piano came into Maya's life by accident, or maybe by fate, depending on what you believe. She was 6 years old when her mother brought her to the Harlem Community Center after school. Diane's shift didn't start until 6, and Maya needed somewhere safe to wait. The community center had an activities room with donated toys books, and in the corner, forgotten and slightly out of tune, an old upright piano. Maya was drawn to it immediately. She climbed onto the bench, her legs too short to reach the pedals, and pressed a single key. Middle C. The sound fascinated her. She pressed it again, and again. Then she tried another key, and another. Within an hour, she had figured out Mary had a little lamb by ear. The community center director, an elderly man named Mr. Washington, who had played jazz saxophone in his youth, heard the melody. He walked into the room and found this tiny girl barely able to see over the keys, picking out a tune she had never been taught. "Child," he said quietly, "do that again." Maya did. And when she finished, Mr. Washington made a phone call that would change her life. The call was to Leonard Hayes, a retired jazz pianist who had played with legends: Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis, Sarah Vaughan, names that meant nothing to 6-year-old Maya, but would one day become her heroes. Leonard had retired to Harlem, and he occasionally taught gifted students for free. He came to the community center the next day. Leonard Hayes was 73 years old, with hands that trembled slightly from arthritis, but eyes that missed nothing. He sat in the corner of the room and watched Maya play. She didn't know he was there. She was lost in the piano, experimenting with sounds, creating little melodies that made sense only to her. After an hour, Leonard stood and walked to the piano. Maya jumped, startled. "What's your name, child?" he asked. "Maya." "Maya? That's a beautiful name. Do you like the piano, Maya?" She nodded, suddenly shy. "Would you like to learn how to really play?" Another nod. Leonard Hayes became Maya's teacher that day. 3 times a week after school, he would meet her at the community center. He taught her scales and theory, but more than that, he taught her the soul of music. Jazz wasn't about perfection, he told her. It was about feeling, about taking pain and joy and fear and love and translating them into sound. The piano, he would say, doesn't care if you're rich or poor, black or white, young or old. All it cares about is whether you have something to say. And little Maya, you have something to say. She was a prodigy. There was no other word for it. By age 8, she could play Thelonious Monk with improvisational flair. By 10, she was composing her own pieces, complex jazz arrangements that stunned everyone who heard them. By 12, she was performing at local jazz clubs on open mic nights, introduced as Leonard Hayes' protege. Marcus and Diane would sit in the audience. Marcus still in his janitor's uniform, Diane exhausted from her nursing shift, and they would watch their daughter transform. On that stage, Maya wasn't the girl from the housing project. She wasn't the kid whose clothes came from donation bins. She was an artist, and she was magnificent. When Maya was 16, Leonard Hayes died quietly in his sleep. His funeral was held at the Abyssinian Baptist Church, and Maya played at his service. She performed one of his original compositions, Harlem Sunrise, and there wasn't a dry eye in the church. In his will, Leonard left Maya his piano. His Steinway Grand, the same piano he had played on stages around the world. "You were the daughter I never had," his note read. "Make the music proud." That piano became Maya's world. She practiced 6, 7, 8 hours a day. Her bedroom in the small apartment became a sanctuary of sound. Her parents never complained about the noise even when they were trying to sleep. They understood. This wasn't just practice. This was Maya building her future. At 18, Maya auditioned for the Berklee College of Music in Boston. She played an original composition, a jazz piece she had written called Frederick Douglass Dreams, inspired by the street where she grew up. The audition panel sat in stunned silence when she finished. She received a full scholarship. Diane cried when the acceptance letter arrived. Marcus couldn't speak, just held his daughter and shook his head in wonder. Their little girl, who used to bang on pots and pans in their tiny kitchen, was going to one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. Maya spent 4 years at Berklee. She studied jazz piano composition and music theory. She played with students from across the globe, absorbing influences from Brazilian bossa nova to Korean traditional music to American blues. Her professors called her gifted. Her peers called her inspiring. Everyone called her the student most likely to succeed. And she did succeed. At least for a while. After graduating at 22, Maya returned to New York. She started playing at jazz clubs in Manhattan. Small venues at first. The Village Vanguard, Smoke Jazz Club, places where legends had played, where the walls themselves seemed to remember music. She built a following. People came specifically to hear Maya Thompson play. Critics wrote about her, calling her the next great jazz pianist. A record label expressed interest. At 24, Maya was on the verge of everything she had worked for. A debut album, tours, a career that would have made Leonard Hayes proud. And then she met Michael Rivera. Michael was a drummer. Not famous, but talented, playing sessions for various artists in New York. He came to one of Maya's shows at Smoke Jazz Club on a rainy Tuesday in April. He sat in the back, ordered a whiskey, and listened to her play. After her set, he approached her at the bar. "That was incredible," he said simply. Maya had heard compliments before, but something about the way Michael said it, the genuine awe in his voice, made her look up. Really look. He had kind eyes, a shy smile, calloused fingers that only came from years of drumming. "Thank you," she said. "I'm Michael. I play drums." "Well, I try to play drums." She laughed. "Maya, I play piano." "Well, I try to play piano." They talked for 3 hours that night. About music. About growing up in New York. About their dreams. Michael had grown up in the Bronx, raised by a single mother who cleaned offices. He understood Maya's story because it was his story too. Different details, same struggle. Same determination to make something more of their lives. They started dating a week later. Within 6 months, they were inseparable. Michael would sit in the audience at every one of Maya's shows, watching her with the same awe he had shown that first night. Sometimes he would join her on stage, his drums providing the heartbeat beneath her melodies. They were good together, not just romantically, musically. Their sounds complemented each other, creating something neither could achieve alone. 2 years after they met, Michael proposed. No ring. They couldn't afford one. But he proposed with a song, a drum solo he had composed specifically for her, complex and beautiful and full of love. Maya cried, said yes. They married at City Hall with just their families present. Diane made a small cake. Marcus gave them $500 he had been saving in secret. It was the happiest day of Maya's life. They moved into a small apartment in Washington Heights. 1 bedroom. A kitchen barely big enough for 2 people. But it was theirs. Maya's Steinway Grand took up most of the living room, but neither of them cared. That piano was family. Maya was 26 when she got pregnant. She and Michael were terrified and thrilled. They weren't ready, not financially, but they were ready in every other way. They started planning. Michael took extra session work. Maya played more shows. They were going to make it work. They had to. Maya was 6 months pregnant when the record label made their offer. A debut album, a modest advance. Not enough to change their lives, but enough to start. She was going to record it after the baby was born, after she recovered. The label was willing to wait for Maya Thompson. She was worth waiting for. Everything was falling into place. And then, on a Tuesday night in February, Michael died. He was driving home from a late session in Manhattan, a recording studio in Soho, a jazz fusion project that had run until 2 in the morning. Michael was careful. He always was. But the other driver wasn't. Drunk. Running a red light. Doing 60 in a 35 zone. The impact killed Michael instantly. Maya got the call at 3 in the morning. A police officer on the other end, his voice professionally gentle, telling her words that didn't make sense. Accident. Didn't suffer. So sorry for your loss. She stood in their apartment, 6 months pregnant, holding the phone, and she couldn't process it. Michael was supposed to be home in 20 minutes. He had texted her at midnight. Almost done here. Love you. Can't wait to meet our little one. He never came home. The funeral was a blur. Maya couldn't cry, couldn't speak, couldn't feel anything except the baby moving inside her, oblivious to the fact that she would never meet her father. Diane held Maya through the service. Marcus sat stone-faced, trying to be strong, but Maya was somewhere else. Somewhere the grief couldn't reach her yet. 3 months later, Lily was born. 8 pounds, 3 ounces. Healthy. Perfect. She had Michael's eyes. Maya held her daughter in the hospital, and finally the tears came. Because Lily was beautiful, and because Michael would never hold her, never see her smile, never hear her laugh. The joy and the grief hit simultaneously, and Maya wept for hours, holding this tiny human who represented both the best and worst moments of her life. The medical bills from the delivery were catastrophic. Maya had insurance, but it covered less than she thought. Complications during delivery meant extra days in the hospital, extra procedures, bills that mounted into tens of thousands of dollars. The same hospital where her mother had worked for years sent collection notices to Maya's apartment. Michael's death had already drained their small savings. Funeral costs. Final expenses. The drunk driver had no insurance, no assets. There was nothing to sue for. Maya was left with debt, a newborn, and no way to work. She tried. She really did. She took Lily to a few shows, the baby in a carrier on her chest, while Maya played. But clubs weren't set up for that. Lily would cry, disrupting performances. Club owners were sympathetic, but firm. This wasn't going to work. The record label called. Gently, regretfully, they explained that they needed to move on. The music industry didn't wait for grief. They wished her the best. They really did. But the contract was canceled. Maya stopped playing piano. Couldn't. Every time she sat at Leonard Hayes' Steinway, she thought of Michael, of the future they had planned, of the music they would never make together. The piano, once her salvation, became a reminder of everything she had lost. The bills piled up. Rent, utilities, hospital debt, student loans from Berkeley she had deferred but couldn't defer forever. Credit cards maxed out buying diapers and formula. Her mother helped when she could, but Diane was supporting herself and Marcus on a nurse's salary. There wasn't much to spare. Maya missed one rent payment. Then two. Her landlord was patient at first, but patience has limits. On a Monday morning in August, when Lily was 4 months old, Maya received an eviction notice. 30 days. She called everyone she could think of, friends from Berkeley, fellow musicians, old contacts, begging for work, for money, for anything. But the music world is precarious. Everyone she knew was struggling themselves. They offered sympathy, prayers. No one could offer money. 29 days after the eviction notice, Maya Thompson packed everything she and Lily owned into 3 garbage bags. Clothes, diapers, baby supplies. She had to leave the Steinway behind, the piano that Leonard Hayes had left her, the piano she had practiced on for years, the piano that was supposed to launch her career. She couldn't afford to move it, couldn't afford to store it. The landlord said he would sell it for back rent. Maya touched the keys one last time, played a single note. Middle C, the same note she had played at 6 years old in the Harlem Community Center. The beginning of everything. And then she walked out of the apartment carrying her 4-month-old daughter and 3 bags of belongings, and became homeless. She tried shelters first. New York City has dozens of them, overcrowded and underfunded. She would wait in line for hours, Lily in her arms, hoping for a bed. Sometimes she got one. Sometimes she didn't. The shelters that accepted mothers with infants had waiting lists, weeks long. Maya put her name on every list, but lists didn't help when night was falling, and she had nowhere to go. She slept in subway stations, in the waiting rooms of hospitals, in 24-hour diners where sympathetic waitresses would let her sit in a booth all night if she ordered coffee. She would nurse Lily, trying to keep her quiet, trying to be invisible. The city has no patience for homeless mothers. They're everywhere and nowhere, visible enough to be judged, invisible enough to be ignored. Winter came. Lily was 6 months old, and Maya was living day to day, meal to meal. She would panhandle, but with a baby, people either gave generously out of pity or walked past quickly out of discomfort. She made enough for food, for diapers, never enough for rent. She found a more permanent shelter in the Bronx, a women's facility that had space for mothers. The beds were thin cots in a room with 20 other women. The bathroom was shared. Privacy was non-existent, but it was warm and safe. And Lily could sleep without Maya worrying about the cold. At night, after Lily fell asleep, Maya would lie on her cot and hum. Jazz standards, lullabies, songs she and Michael used to play together. She couldn't play piano, but she could hum. And sometimes she would move her fingers on the edge of the cot, pressing imaginary keys, her muscle memory refusing to forget. One of the shelter volunteers, an older woman named Grace, noticed. She brought Maya a piece of cardboard, drew piano keys on it with a marker, and left it by her cot without saying a word. Maya cried when she saw it. Then she placed the cardboard on her lap and practiced. Her fingers moved across drawn keys, making no sound but remembering. Always remembering. 8 months after becoming homeless, Maya saw the poster. America's grand stage, New York's biggest talent competition, open auditions, first prize $250,000. It was taped to a pole outside the shelter. Maya stared at it for 10 minutes, holding Lily, calculating. That money could change everything. An apartment, childcare, time to rebuild her career, a future for Lily. But the thought of performing again, of sitting at a piano in front of judges and an audience, terrified her. What if she had lost it? What if 8 months away from a real piano had erased her gift? What if she walked onto that stage and failed, proving every cruel thought she had about herself was right? She almost didn't go, almost threw the idea away as impossible. But that night, lying in the shelter, Lily sleeping on her chest, Maya thought about Leonard Hayes, about her parents, about Michael, about everyone who had believed in her. And she thought about Lily, about the life her daughter deserved. Maya made her decision. She was going to audition, she was going to play, and she was going to fight for her daughter's future the only way she knew how, with music. The auditions for America's grand stage were being held on a Saturday in late November. Maya had 2 weeks to prepare. 2 weeks to remember everything she had spent 8 months trying to forget. She started practicing in the shelter. After the other women went to sleep after Lily was down, Maya would sit on her cot with the cardboard piano Grace had made for her. She would close her eyes and visualize. Her fingers would move across the drawn keys, and in her mind, she could hear the music. Every note, every chord, every subtle variation. It wasn't the same as a real piano. The muscle memory was there, but without the tactile feedback, without the resistance of actual keys, without the sound to confirm she was hitting the right notes, Maya couldn't be sure. Was she remembering correctly? Or was her mind filling in gaps with what she wanted to hear, rather than what was real? The doubt gnawed at her, but she didn't stop. She practiced 3, 4, 5 hours a night. Her fingers moved until they cramped, until the other women in the shelter asked her to please stop. It was distracting. She would apologize, wait 30 minutes, then start again. During the day, Maya would take Lily to the public library. The Bronx Library on Fordham Road had a community room with an old upright piano rarely used. Maya would wait until the room was empty, then she would sit Lily in a baby carrier on the floor beside the bench, and she would play. Quietly, tentatively at first. Her fingers stumbling over keys that felt foreign after so long. But slowly the memory returned. The music came back. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to remind her why she had fallen in love with piano in the first place. She chose her piece carefully. She wasn't going to play a standard. Not Monk or Ellington or any of the jazz legends she had grown up studying. This needed to be personal, original, something that told her story without words. She composed it over those 2 weeks. A piece she titled Lily's Lullaby. It started slow and haunting, representing Michael's death. The grief, the darkness. Then it shifted, becoming chaotic, dissonant, mirroring the months of homelessness. The fear. The desperation. And finally it resolved into something beautiful. A melody that represented Lily. Hope. Love. The reason Maya was still fighting. It was 7 minutes long. Maybe too long for an audition, but Maya didn't care. This was her story. She was going to tell it completely, or not at all. The night before the audition, Maya couldn't sleep. Lily was restless too, as if sensing her mother's anxiety. Maya held her daughter pacing the small space between cots, humming softly. The other women in the shelter were kind. They had listened to Maya practice. They knew what tomorrow meant. Grace, the volunteer who had made the cardboard piano, approached Maya around midnight. "You ready?" she asked quietly. Maya shook her head. "I don't think so. I'm terrified." "Good," Grace said. "Means you care. Means it matters." She handed Maya a dress. Simple. Navy blue. Clean. Wore this to my daughter's college graduation. Thought you might need it. Maya's eyes filled with tears. "I can't. This is too much." "Yes, you can. And no, it's not." Grace smiled. "You're going to walk on that stage tomorrow, and you're going to show them what a woman from the Bronx can do. You're going to make us proud." Maya accepted the dress. "Thank you. For everything. Thank me by winning." Saturday morning arrived cold and gray. Maya dressed carefully in Grace's navy dress. It was slightly too big, but it was clean and dignified. She did her hair as best she could, with no products pulling it back simply. No makeup, no jewelry. She looked in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized herself. She looked tired. Older than 29. But her eyes still held that something. That dignity the streets couldn't take. Lily was dressed in the nicest onesie Maya owned. Clean, pink. A gift from her mother when Lily was born. Maya packed a small bag with diapers, formula, extra clothes. Everything they might need. The auditions were being held at the Grand Theater in Midtown Manhattan. Maya had to take 2 trains to get there. The subway was crowded with Saturday shoppers and tourists. Maya held Lily close, feeling the stares. A homeless woman with a baby on the subway wasn't unusual. But a homeless woman in a nice dress holding a baby, looking like she had somewhere important to be. That drew attention. She arrived at the theater at noon. The line of hopeful contestants stretched around the block. Hundreds of people, singers, dancers, magicians, acrobats, everyone chasing the same dream, the same prize money, the same moment in the spotlight. Maya got in line. Lily started fussing, hungry. Maya found a quiet corner and nursed her, ignoring the looks from other contestants. This was her reality. If they had a problem with it, that was on them. The line moved slowly. Maya's turn came at 4 in the afternoon. 4 hours of standing, waiting, doubting. By the time a production assistant called her name, Maya was exhausted. Lily was crying. Maya's confidence, already fragile, was crumbling. Maya Thompson. The assistant called. "Here," Maya said, her voice barely audible. The assistant looked at her clipboard, then at Maya, then at Lily. "You're up next. Follow me." Maya followed her backstage. The chaos was overwhelming. Contestants warming up, staff running around, cameras everywhere. This was a major production, televised, watched by millions. Maya had known that intellectually, but standing here now, the reality of it hit her. What was she doing? She was a homeless woman with a baby about to walk onto a stage in front of judges and an audience and cameras and pretend she belonged there. Pretend she was still the girl who got a scholarship to Berkeley. Pretend 8 months of sleeping in shelters hadn't broken something fundamental inside her. She almost turned back. Almost told the assistant there had been a mistake. She couldn't do this. But then Lily stopped crying. The baby looked up at her mother, smiled, and reached for Maya's face with tiny hands. A moment of perfect trust. Perfect love. Michael's voice echoed in Maya's memory. "Your music can change the world, Maya. Never forget that." Maya took a breath. Okay, she whispered to Lily. Okay, we can do this. The production assistant opened a door. You're on after this guy. When you hear your name, walk straight onto the stage. Good luck. Maya waited in the wings. She could see the stage from here. The piano. A Steinway grand, just like Leonard Hayes' piano, just like the one she had lost. The judges' table. 4 people sitting there, with the power to change her life or end her dream in seconds. She recognized one of them from the promotional materials. Rebecca Blackwood, a CEO of some tech company. Wealthy beyond measure, known for being the harshest judge on the panel, the one who didn't suffer fools, the one who had reportedly made contestants cry. The current contestant finished his act, a magic trick that went wrong. The judges thanked him politely. He walked off stage dejected. Next up, Maya Thompson. The announcer's voice boomed. This was it. No more preparation, no more doubt, no more time. Maya adjusted Lily in her arms, took one final breath, and walked into the light. The walk from the wings to center stage felt like miles. Maya's legs moved automatically, muscle memory carrying her forward while her mind screamed at her to run. The stage lights were blinding hot and white and unforgiving. Beyond them she could sense, rather than see, the audience. Hundreds of faces in the darkness. Watching. Waiting. Judging. She stopped at the mark the production assistant had indicated. An X taped to the floor in front of the judges' table. This was where contestants were supposed to stand for their introduction, where they would plead their case, explain why they deserved to be here. Lily squirmed in Maya's arms, uncomfortable under the bright lights. Maya adjusted her daughter's position, trying to shield her eyes from the glare. The movement drew attention to the baby. Maya could feel the shift in the room. Confusion. Surprise. Judgment. Name. The question came from the judge on the far left. A man in his 50s with kind eyes. David Chen, a Broadway producer, according to the show's promotional materials. Maya Thompson, she said. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. Good. And who's this with you? David asked, gesturing to Lily. This is my daughter, Lily. She's 8 months old. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Rebecca Blackwood leaned forward, her expression unreadable. She was younger than Maya had expected from her photos. Mid-40s maybe. Perfectly styled blonde hair. A designer suit that probably cost more than Maya had made in the past year. Diamond earrings that caught the light. Ms. Thompson. Rebecca, said her voice cool and professional. I'm not sure you're aware, but this is a talent competition. We're looking for performers, not daycare situations. Scattered laughter from the audience. Not mean-spirited necessarily. Nervous. Uncomfortable. But laughter nonetheless. Maya felt heat rise to her face. Shame. Anger. The same feeling she got every time someone saw her as less than. As a problem to be solved, rather than a person to be respected. But she didn't look away. Didn't apologize for existing. Didn't shrink. I understand, Maya said evenly. I have nowhere to leave her. But I can play piano. I promise you I can play. Rebecca's eyebrow arched. Can you? What's your background? I graduated from Berklee College of Music. Jazz piano. I've performed at clubs across New York. The Village Vanguard. Smoke Jazz Club. I was offered a record deal before. Maya's voice caught. She forced herself to continue. Before my husband died. The laughter stopped. The mood in the theater shifted. Another judge spoke up. Carmen Rodriguez, a Grammy-winning singer. I'm sorry for your loss, she said gently. How long ago? 10 months. He died when I was 6 months pregnant. Silence. Heavy and uncomfortable. The kind of silence that comes when people don't know what to say because any words feel inadequate. Rebecca's expression hadn't changed. If anything, she looked more skeptical. And you're homeless now. Maya wanted to deny it. Wanted to explain that homelessness wasn't a choice, wasn't a moral failing, wasn't the sum total of who she was. But all she said was yes. I see. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. Ms. Thompson, I appreciate your situation. I do. But this is a talent show, not a charity case. We have thousands of contestants. Everyone has a sob story. What makes yours different? The words hung in the air like a slap. Maya felt something crack inside her. Not break. Crack. And through that crack came something she hadn't felt in 8 months. Anger. Not at Rebecca necessarily, at everything. At the drunk driver who killed Michael. At the medical bills. At the landlord. At the city that had let her and Lily slip through the cracks. At a world that saw her daughter as an inconvenience rather than a human being. When Maya spoke, her voice was quiet. Controlled. But underneath it was steel. What makes me different? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm just like every other person who's walked onto this stage tonight. I'm desperate. I'm scared. I'm hoping for a miracle. She looked directly at Rebecca. The only difference is I'm not pretending otherwise. I need this. My daughter needs this. And I'm asking you, please, just let me play. If I'm not good enough, tell me. I'll walk off this stage and you'll never see me again. But give me the chance to show you what I can do. Music saved my life once, Maya continued. I'm asking it to save hers. The theater was silent. The judges exchanged glances. Rebecca's expression was still unreadable, but something flickered behind her eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or maybe just impatience. Fine, Rebecca said finally. Someone get the baby. Maya scanned the audience. Who could she trust with Lily? A stranger in a room full of strangers, movement in the 3rd row. An elderly black woman was standing. She was perhaps 70, with silver hair and a face that had seen its share of hardship. She wore a simple church dress and sensible shoes. She walked toward the stage with purpose, her hands already outstretched. Their eyes met. The woman smiled. I raised 5 children, she said quietly. I can handle one more for a few minutes. Maya hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to let go of her daughter. But she had come this far, and something about this woman felt safe, familiar, like Grace from the shelter, like her own mother. Her name is Lily Maya, said her voice breaking slightly. She just ate, so she should be okay. But if she cries, she won't cry, the woman said with certainty. Will you, sweet girl? She took Lily, gently cradling her with practiced ease. Lily looked at this stranger considered, then settled against her chest. Content. Thank you, Maya whispered. Show them what you've got, baby, the woman said. Show them all. Maya turned toward the piano. This was real now. No more delays. No more excuses. The Steinway Grand waited for her, black and gleaming under the lights. She had dreamed of this moment, feared it, and now she was living it. She walked to the bench, sat down. The leather was smooth beneath her, expensive. The piano was perfectly tuned. She could tell just from the ambient sound the way the room resonated around it. Her hands hovered over the keys. In the audience, she could feel Rebecca Blackwood's skepticism, David Chen's sympathy, Carmen Rodriguez's curiosity. The fourth judge, whose name Maya couldn't remember, looked bored already. The audience was restless. People coughing, whispering, checking their phones. They had been here for hours, watching act after act. Most were mediocre at best. They didn't expect much from a homeless woman with a baby. And maybe they were right not to. Maya's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs, trying to steady them. 8 months since she had played on a real piano. 8 months of cardboard and imagination. What if her muscle memory had faded? What if the piece she had composed sounded terrible on an actual instrument? What if she failed here on stage in front of all these people and proved that homelessness had taken her talent along with everything else? Rebecca sighed audibly. "Ms. Thompson, we don't have all day." Maya placed her hands on the keys. The ivory was cool against her skin. Familiar. Right. She closed her eyes. And she thought about Michael. About the night he proposed with a drum solo. About the way he would watch her play, his face full of wonder. About the last text he sent. "Can't wait to meet our little one." She thought about Lily. About her daughter's smile. Her laugh. The way she reached for Maya's face with complete trust. She thought about Leonard Hayes. About a 6-year-old girl discovering a piano in a community center. About Make the Music proud. She thought about her parents. About Grace. About the woman in the 3rd row holding her daughter. She thought about every moment, every note, every song that had led her to this piano. This stage, this second chance. Maya took a breath, exhaled, and played. The first note was middle C, a single pure tone that filled the grand theater like a whispered prayer. Maya held it, her right hand steady on the key, her left hand hovering. The note resonated in the vast space, and for a moment that was all there was. One note, one sound, one heartbeat, and then her left hand fell, adding a minor 3rd below. The harmony was dark, melancholy, the beginning of grief. Lily's lullaby had begun. Maya had structured the piece in 3 movements, though they flowed together without pause. The first movement was death. It started with that minor harmony building slowly. Her right hand traced a melody that descended like tears, chromatic, dissonant in places, beautiful in its sadness. This was Michael dying. This was the phone call at 3 a.m. This was standing at his funeral, 6 months pregnant, unable to cry, unable to feel. The music descended further darker until it reached the lowest notes on the piano. Bass notes that rumbled like distant thunder, like the sound of earth hitting a coffin. Maya's eyes were closed. She wasn't in the Grand Theater anymore. She was in their apartment in Washington Heights. She was sitting at Leonard Hayes's Steinway Michael's empty drum kit in the corner, and she was playing the grief she couldn't speak. Her hands moved faster. The tempo increased. 16th notes cascading like rain. The melody fragmented, breaking apart into chaos. This was the second movement. Homelessness. Survival. Fear. Dissonant chords crashed together. Her left hand pounded out a rhythm that was almost violent, aggressive. This was sleeping in subway stations. This was nursing Lily in 24-hour diners while waitresses pretended not to notice. This was begging for a bed in overcrowded shelters. This was the city at its cruelest, its most indifferent. The music spiraled, became frantic. Maya's fingers flew across the keys, playing faster than she had thought possible. The chaos built, and the audience leaned forward in their seats, mesmerized and horrified by the raw emotion pouring from this piano. And then suddenly silence. Maya's hands lifted from the keys mid-phrase. The absence of sound was shocking. The theater held its breath. 5 seconds of silence. 10. And then so quietly it was almost imperceptible, Maya played a single note in the upper register. High C, delicate, fragile, the sound of hope barely surviving. The third movement had begun. This was Lily. This was Maya's daughter opening her eyes for the first time. This was a newborn's cry. This was life persisting in the face of death. The melody was simple, a lullaby, the kind a mother would hum to help her baby sleep. But as Maya developed it, the lullaby grew. It gained complexity. Harmonies wove underneath the main melody. Her left hand, which had been pounding violence moments before, now played gentle arpeggios, supportive, nurturing. The music swelled. This wasn't just Lily anymore. This was every mother who had fought for her child. Every parent who had sacrificed. Every person who had loved so completely that their own needs became secondary. The melody climbed higher. Maya's right hand reached for the upper octaves, playing with a delicacy that made every note feel precious. The harmonies underneath shifted from minor to major, from darkness into light. But not easy light, not simple light. Light that had been earned through suffering, through survival. Maya's face was wet with tears, but she didn't stop playing. Couldn't stop. The music had taken over now. Her hands knew what to do. They remembered. Despite 8 months away from a real piano, despite the cardboard and the shelters, and the doubt, her hands remembered. The tempo increased again, but this time it wasn't chaotic. It was joyful, celebratory. The melody repeated variations building on variations, jazz in its purest form, improvisation rooted in structure, freedom within discipline. Maya was showing them everything now. Every technique she had learned from Leonard Hayes, every influence she had absorbed at Berkeley, every late night playing in jazz clubs, every hour practicing on that Steinway grand that she had lost. It all poured out of her through her hands into this piano. The judges sat frozen. Rebecca Blackwood's arms were no longer crossed. She was leaning forward, her expression no longer skeptical, but transfixed. David Chen had tears streaming down his face. Carmen Rodriguez had one hand over her mouth. The fourth judge, the one whose name Maya couldn't remember, was staring like he had just witnessed something holy. The audience was absolutely silent. No coughing, no whispers, no phones. Every person in that theater was locked into this moment, this performance, this woman who had walked onto the stage carrying a baby and was now revealing herself to be something else entirely. An artist. The music reached its climax. Both of Maya's hands were in the upper register now, playing a duet with herself. The melody in her right hand, harmonies in her left. They danced together, spiraling upward, building tension that needed release. And then Maya brought it home. The final resolution. The melody settled on a major chord. Simple, perfect. The tensions resolved. The dissonance became consonance. The chaos became peace. She held the chord, her foot on the sustain pedal, letting the sound fill the theater, letting it resonate until the natural decay faded into silence. Maya's hands stayed on the keys for a moment longer, making sure, making certain the piece was complete. Then she lifted her hands and opened her eyes. The silence that followed was absolute. Maya blinked, coming back to herself. Back to the grand theater. Back to the stage lights and the judges and the audience. She had been gone, lost in the music, lost in memory. For 7 minutes, she hadn't been Maya Thompson, homeless mother. She had been pure sound, pure emotion, pure truth. She turned slowly on the bench to face the audience. They stared back at her, hundreds of faces, and every single one was crying. The woman in the third row, still holding Lily, had tears streaming down her face. Lily was asleep in her arms, peaceful, unaware that her mother had just poured her entire soul into 7 minutes of music. Maya looked at the judges' table. Rebecca Blackwood was standing, just standing. Her face was wet with tears she hadn't bothered to wipe away. Her expression was something Maya couldn't name. Shock, awe, something else, something that looked almost like pain. David Chen wasn't even trying to compose himself. He was openly weeping, his shoulders shaking. Carmen Rodriguez had both hands pressed to her chest over her heart. Her eyes were wide. The fourth judge. Maya finally remembered his name. Thomas Wright. A classical conductor was shaking his head slowly. Over and over, like he couldn't process what he had just heard. No one was speaking. No one was moving. And then from somewhere in the back of the theater, someone started clapping. Slowly at first. A single pair of hands. Then another person joined. Then another. The applause spread like wildfire through the audience, people rising to their feet. And suddenly the entire theater was standing. Clapping. Some people were shouting, cheering. The sound built and built, a roar of approval that shook the rafters. Maya stood from the piano bench, unsteady on her feet. She couldn't process this. The response, the emotion. She had hoped they would like it, had prayed she wouldn't embarrass herself. But this was something else. Rebecca Blackwood was walking toward the stage. The audience quieted, curious. Rebecca never left the judges' table during performances. It was against protocol. But she was walking up the steps to the stage now, directly toward Maya. Her expression was unreadable again. That cold, professional mask back in place. Maya's heart sank. This was it. Rebecca was going to tell her it was good, but not good enough. That she appreciated the effort. But this was a talent show, not therapy. That Rebecca stopped 3 feet from Maya. They were the same height, eye to eye. Rebecca's perfectly applied makeup was ruined by tears. Her mascara had run. She looked human in a way the polished CEO veneer had hidden. Rebecca started, then stopped. Her voice was thick with emotion. She cleared her throat. Tried again. I need to apologize to you. Maya blinked. What I judged you, Rebecca said. Before you played a single note, I looked at you and your daughter, and I made assumptions. I was cruel. I was wrong. She paused. I'm sorry. The audience was silent again, watching this unfold. In 20 years of judging competitions, attending performances, funding the arts, Rebecca's voice broke. She took a breath. I have never heard anything like what you just played. That wasn't just talent. That was... God, I don't even have words for it. Maya didn't know what to say. Her mind was blank. Overwhelmed. Rebecca turned to face the audience. "Most of you don't know this about me," she said, her voice carrying across the theater. 15 years ago, I had a daughter. Emma. She would have been 16 now. Past tense, would have been. The words hung heavy. She died when she was 13 months old. SIDS. Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. One morning I went to wake her up and she was just gone. Rebecca's voice was steady, but tears were flowing freely now. I was a different person before that. I played piano, not professionally, but I loved it. After Emma died, I couldn't touch a piano again. Couldn't listen to music. It hurt too much. She turned back to Maya. What you played just now, that third movement, the lullaby, that was Emma. That was every mother who has ever loved a child so much it hurts. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. The ability to hear music and feel joy instead of pain. Rebecca's hand went to a pendant around her neck. Maya hadn't noticed it before. A small diamond pendant shaped like a musical note. Emma gave this to me for Mother's Day. 2 months before she died. She called it my music heart. The theater was crying now, not scattered tears. Everyone, the audience, the other judges, the production crew, everyone. Rebecca walked to the edge of the stage where a large red button sat. The golden buzzer. The one button that sent a contestant straight to the finals no matter what the other judges said. It was meant to be used sparingly. Once per season per judge. For acts that were truly extraordinary. Rebecca placed her hand on the button. I told myself I wasn't going to use this, she said. I told myself I was going to be professional, objective. She looked at Maya. Screw that. She slammed her hand down on the button. Golden confetti exploded from the ceiling. Lights flashed. Music blared from the speakers. The audience went wild, jumping, screaming, applauding. It was chaos. Beautiful chaos. Maya stood in the center of it all, unable to move, unable to process. This was real. This was happening. She had walked onto this stage homeless and desperate and scared, and now golden confetti was falling around her like rain. Rebecca walked to her and pulled her into a hug. A real hug. Not performative. Not for the cameras. Just one woman holding another woman who had touched something deep inside her. Thank you, Rebecca whispered in Maya's ear. Thank you for reminding me why art matters. When they pulled apart, the woman from the audience was bringing Lily up to the stage. The baby had woken up from all the noise, but she wasn't crying. She was looking around with wide eyes, taking in the lights and confetti and chaos. The woman handed Lily to Maya. You did it, baby, she said with a huge smile. You really did it. Maya held her daughter, and for the first time in 8 months, she felt something she had forgotten was possible. Hope. The confetti continued to fall. The audience continued to cheer. The other judges came onto the stage to congratulate her. David Chen hugged her and said through tears, "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard on this stage." Carmen Rodriguez kissed her on the cheek and whispered, "You're going to change the world, Hermana." Thomas Wright simply shook her hand and said, "Brava." But Maya was only partially aware of all of it. She was holding Lily, looking down at her daughter's face and realizing what this meant. The golden buzzer meant she was in the finals. The finals meant a chance at the grand prize, $250,000. A chance to give Lily the life she deserved. A production assistant approached with a microphone. Maya, can we get a few words? How are you feeling? How is she feeling? Maya laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical. I don't have words. That performance was incredible, the assistant said. Where did you learn to play like that? Maya looked down at Lily, then out at the audience, then at Rebecca, who was watching her with an expression of profound respect. "I learned to play from a man named Leonard Hayes," Maya said finally. "He taught me that the piano doesn't care where you come from. It only cares what you have to say." She paused. "And I learned from my husband, Michael, who died before he could meet our daughter. He taught me that music is love made audible." Her voice strengthened. "But most of all, I learned from her." She gestured to Lily. "In the last 8 months, living in shelters, sleeping in subway stations, I could have given up. I wanted to give up. But every time I looked at her face, I remembered why I couldn't. She needed me to fight, to survive, to remember who I was before the world tried to break me." Maya looked directly at the camera. "I'm not just a homeless woman. I'm not just a sob story. I'm a mother. I'm an artist. And I'm still here." The audience erupted again. Applause that seemed like it would never end. Rebecca stepped forward with the microphone. "Maya, I want to make you an offer. Regardless of how the competition goes, I want to help you and Lily. Housing, childcare, whatever you need to get back on your feet and focus on your music. You're too talented to be sleeping in shelters." Maya stared at her. "Why would you do that?" "Because Emma would have wanted me to," Rebecca said simply. "Because music saved you, and watching you play saved something in me I thought was dead." She smiled. "And because it's the right thing to do." Maya's vision blurred with tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes." "Yes," Maya whispered. Then louder, "Yes. Thank you. Yes." The confetti was still falling. The lights were still flashing. The audience was still cheering. But in that moment, Maya was only aware of 3 things: her daughter in her arms, the piano behind her, and the future spreading out before them both like an unwritten song. The aftermath of the golden buzzer was controlled chaos. Production assistants rushed around directing cameras, organizing confetti cleanup, preparing for the next contestant. But the energy in the theater had fundamentally shifted. The audience was buzzing. People were hugging strangers, crying, laughing. What Maya had done transcended entertainment. It had become a shared experience, a moment that everyone present would remember for the rest of their lives. Maya was escorted backstage, still holding Lily, still in a daze. The woman who had held her daughter during the performance walked with her, introducing herself as Dorothy Wilson, a retired nurse from Brooklyn. "I've seen a lot in my 72 years, Dorothy said, her voice warm. "But that was something else entirely. You take care of yourself and that beautiful baby, you hear me?" "I will," Maya promised. "Thank you for holding her, for trusting me. Baby, you earned that trust the moment you played that first note." Dorothy squeezed Maya's hand. "You're going to do great things. I feel it in my bones." Rebecca found Maya in the green room 20 minutes later. The CEO had composed herself, wiped away her ruined makeup, but her eyes were still red. She sat down next to Maya with uncharacteristic gentleness. "I meant what I said out there," Rebecca began. "About helping you. I've already made some calls. I have a colleague who runs supportive housing programs in Manhattan. She has an apartment available. 2 bedrooms. Safe neighborhood. It's yours if you want it." Maya couldn't speak, could only nod. "There's more," Rebecca continued. "I know a woman who runs a childcare co-op, sliding scale fees based on income, high-quality care. They have an opening for Lily." "I can't afford," Maya started. "I'll cover it," Rebecca interrupted. "For the first year. After that, with your talent, you'll be able to afford it yourself. Hell, after you win this competition, you'll be able to afford a lot of things. You don't know I'll win." Rebecca smiled. "Yes, I do. I've been judging this show for 5 seasons. I've seen thousands of acts. You're different. What you have isn't just skill, it's truth. And truth always wins in the end. She pulled out a business card, wrote something on the back. This is my personal number. Call me tomorrow. We'll get you set up with the apartment. Get Lily into childcare. Then we need to talk about your career. My career. Maya, you're going to be famous after tonight. This episode won't air for 2 months, but word spreads in the music industry. You have a record deal in your past that fell through. Let's revive it. Let's get you in a studio. Let's make the album you were meant to make. Maya looked down at Lily, who was staring up at her mother with complete trust, complete love. Why are you doing all this? Rebecca was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. When Emma died, I threw myself into work, built a company, made more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, became successful by every measure society cares about. But I was empty. I thought the emptiness was just who I was now, the price of losing a child. She looked at Maya. But watching you play tonight, holding your daughter, fighting for her future with everything you have, you reminded me that love doesn't die. It transforms. My love for Emma doesn't have to be just grief. It can be action. It can be helping another mother and daughter. It can be this. You're an amazing person, Maya said. No, Rebecca said firmly. I'm a person who made a lot of mistakes and got a second chance to do better. You gave me that chance. So please let me help you. Not as charity, as repayment for what you gave me tonight. Maya reached out and took Rebecca's hand. Okay. Yes. Thank you. They sat together in silence for a while. 2 women from completely different worlds connected by music and loss and the shared experience of loving a child. Eventually, a production assistant knocked on the door. Ms. Thompson, we need you back on stage for a final interview segment. Maya stood adjusting Lily in her arms. Rebecca stood too. You nervous? Rebecca asked. Maya laughed, terrified. Good. Channel it into the performance. You're going to win this thing, Maya. And then the real work begins. What real work? Rebecca smiled. Changing the world with your music, just like your husband said you could. 6 months after that November night at the Grand Theater, Maya Thompson stood in her apartment in Harlem, watching the sunrise through the living room window. The apartment was small, but hers. 2 bedrooms, just like Rebecca had promised. 1 for Maya, 1 for Lily. A kitchen with actual counter space. A bathroom that she didn't have to share with 20 other women. A living room where, taking up most of the space, but absolutely worth it, sat a piano. Not Leonard Hayes' Steinway. That had been sold years ago for back rent. But Rebecca had helped Maya acquire another one. A baby grand, restored to perfect condition. The sound wasn't quite the same, but it was close enough. And every time Maya played it, she felt Leonard's presence, felt his approval. Lily, now 14 months old, was pulling herself up on the furniture, learning to walk. She had started babbling recently. Real words mixing with nonsense. Mama was her favorite. Sometimes when Maya practiced, Lily would crawl over to the piano and pull herself up on the bench, reaching for the keys. Maya would lift her onto her lap and let her tiny hands press down notes. Random, chaotic, beautiful. The competition had aired 3 months after Maya's audition. Her performance went viral within hours. 12 million views in the first day. 50 million within a week. People weren't just watching it as entertainment. They were sharing it with messages like "This made me cry," and "Faith in humanity restored." And this is why art matters. Maya had won her preliminary round easily. Then the semifinals. Each performance was different. Original compositions, all of them, each one telling a piece of her story. The judges praised her. The audience loved her. But more than that, people connected with her. She wasn't polished, wasn't manufactured. She was real. And in an entertainment landscape full of carefully curated images, real was revolutionary. The finals had been held last month. 3 contestants competing for the grand prize of $250,000. Maya had played Lily's Lullaby again, the piece from her audition, but she had expanded it, made it longer, more complex, more raw. She won unanimously. The money had come through 2 weeks ago. After taxes, it was closer to $170,000. Still life-changing. Maya had paid off her medical debt, paid her parents back for everything they had given her over the years, set up a college fund for Lily, put the rest in savings. But more valuable than the money was what had come after. The record label had called back. A different label bigger, but they had heard about her Berkeley history and wanted to revive the deal. Maya was recording her debut album. Working title, Lullabies for the Lost. Original compositions, jazz standards, reinterpretations of classical pieces. Everything that had influenced her filtered through her unique voice. Rebecca had become more than a benefactor. She had become a friend, a mentor. Once a week, they had coffee together. Rebecca would share business advice. Maya would play new compositions for feedback. Sometimes they just talked about their daughters, about loss, about the strange ways life could transform tragedy into hope. Maya was performing regularly now. Small venues, jazz clubs, the same places she used to play before Michael died. But it was different now. People came specifically to see her. Sold-out shows, lines around the block. She was careful to keep the performances intimate. She didn't want to lose the connection, the rawness that had made people fall in love with her music in the first place. She had been interviewed by magazines, podcasts, news programs. Everyone wanted to know her story, and Maya told it honestly, without shame. She talked about homelessness, about the shelter system's failures, about how easily anyone could fall through society's cracks, about how talent existed everywhere in people who never got the chance to share it. Her platform had become bigger than just her music. She was advocating for homeless mothers, working with organizations Rebecca connected her to, using her voice to amplify voices that were usually ignored. But right now, in this moment, watching the sunrise through her apartment window while Lily played on the floor behind her, Maya wasn't thinking about any of that. She was thinking about Michael, about how he would have loved this apartment, would have set up his drum kit in the corner of the living room right next to her piano, would have played with Lily for hours, making her laugh with silly rhythms and offbeat patterns, about how he never got to meet their daughter, never got to see her smile, never got to hold her, about how unfair it was that he was gone. The grief hadn't disappeared. Maya didn't think it ever would, but it had transformed just like Rebecca said. It wasn't this crushing weight anymore. It was a part of her, woven into her music, into her parenting, into everything she did. Michael lived in every note she played, in every lullaby she sang to Lily, in the determination that had gotten them through the darkest times. Maya walked to the piano and sat down. Lily immediately crawled over, making grabby hands. Maya lifted her onto her lap. The baby's hands reached for the keys. Maya guided them gently, showing her how to press down, how to create sound. "Your daddy would have loved teaching you music," Maya said softly. "He would have been so proud of you." Lily babbled something that might have been agreement. Maya played a soft melody. Simple. A lullaby. Lily leaned back against her mother's chest, content. The morning sun streamed through the window, filling the room with golden light. This was enough. This moment. This peace. This second chance at life. The journey wasn't over. Maya knew that. There would be more challenges, more struggles. Raising a daughter as a single mother, even with support, would never be easy. Building a music career in an industry that chewed up and spit out artists would require constant vigilance. But she had survived homelessness, had survived grief, had walked onto a stage carrying her baby and her last shred of hope, and had emerged transformed. She could survive anything. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. "Lunch tomorrow, bring Lily. I want you to meet someone from Columbia Records." Maya smiled and typed back a response. "Yes. Thank you for everything." The reply came immediately. "Thank you for giving me my music back." Maya set down the phone and returned her attention to the piano. To Lily. To this life they were building together. She played. Just for herself. For her daughter. For Michael wherever he was. For Leonard Hayes and her parents, and Dorothy Wilson and Grace from the shelter, and everyone who had helped her when she needed it most. She played because that's what she was meant to do. Not for money, not for fame, not even for the approval of audiences or judges or record labels. She played because music was how she made sense of the world, how she turned pain into beauty, how she loved. Lily's eyes were starting to close, lulled by the melody. Maya kept playing softly now, a lullaby her mother used to sing to her. The baby's breathing slowed, deepened. Sleep. Maya finished the song and sat quietly holding her daughter. The apartment was silent except for Lily's soft breathing and the distant sounds of Harlem waking up. Car horns, voices, the rhythm of the city. Outside this window was a world that had tried to break Maya Thompson. A world that had taken her husband her home, her piano, her dignity. A world that had seen her as disposable. But inside this window was a world Maya had built from nothing. A home, a career, a future, a daughter sleeping peacefully in her arms. The world outside didn't get to define her anymore. She defined herself. And Maya Thompson, pianist, mother survivor artist, was just getting started. Maya's story reminds us of something we too often forget. That talent exists everywhere. That genius isn't limited to those born with privilege. That the woman sleeping in a subway station, or the man panhandling outside your office, or the teenager in a homeless shelter might be carrying gifts the world desperately needs to hear. We judge people by their circumstances, by their appearances, by their addresses or lack thereof. And in doing so, we miss miracles. We miss beauty. We miss truth. Music didn't just save Maya Thompson. It reminded everyone who heard her play that dignity lives in all of us, that second chances are possible, that love, real love for another human being, can give us strength we didn't know we possessed. If this story moved you, I hope you'll think about the Mayas in your own city. The artists working 3 jobs, the mothers choosing between rent and food, the people society has decided aren't worth noticing. They're worth noticing, they're worth helping, they're worth believing in, because you never know. The next person you walk past on the street might be carrying a song the world needs to hear. All they need is a chance to play it.